I'm going to be making some summer dresses from, this was like a duvet cover, and I'm going to be making 2 dresses. One is following a tutorial that I found on YouTube. It's with like puff sleeves and ruffles, and it's like a mini length. And then another one I'm going to make from scratch from some inspiration pictures I found from Pinterest. And it's going to be more of like a midi length. So yeah, I'm gonna make 2 dresses. This has 2 sides of floral, and they're both very like vintage-y. So I'm gonna use this kind of more like ditzy floral for the midi dress because I think it'll be very like dreamy and flowy, and it won't like interrupt the flow of the dress, I guess, because if there's like a lot of pattern going on, it can look a little bit weird if it's like all cut up and like put together, if you know what I mean. And then there's this other side that's like this teal-ish with like bright pink flowers with green leaves. I think this side would be perfect for the mini length dress since there's like, I don't usually like that much pattern, but for a mini length dress there's not like a whole lot of fabric going on, so it won't be too busy. So that's what I'm thinking right now. And this side is giving me like very the scene in the movie Enchanted, I think, where like, I think her name is Amy Adams, she's the actress that plays Giselle, and she like cuts up the curtains and makes dresses. This print gives me that vibe, so yeah.
Hello?
Okay, you know what? You gotta go. Look, I don't know what your deal is, if you're waiting for Prince Charming or you're just...
Prince Edward.
Whatever. I'll get you to a bus, a train, a plane, wherever, and then that's it. I can't get involved after that. Where did you get that?
I made it. Do you like it? You're unhappy.
I'm first going to make the one that has a tutorial, so I'll have to do less thinking and I just have to follow it. I'm going to show like my steps and progress. I think that's just fun to watch other people making stuff. Yeah, and then for the one that doesn't have a tutorial, I'll kind of be making a tutorial-ish, but it won't be like that helpful since I'm just winging it. But yeah, I'm going to go start making the first dress. So here are some general materials that I used: a sewing machine, some ribbon, pins, thread, and fabric scissors. Also a lot of fabric. I don't know how much fabric I used in total, but if you're buying fabric, just get more than enough, or like thrift a bed sheet or something like that. So from the video that I watched, here is the sketch and the measurements that I have to do. So the next step was to start the measurements so we can make the pattern. So some examples of things I had to measure was like my bust, my waist, and also how long I want the dress to be, and then also like around the armpit area kind of to figure out how big the sleeve would be. So here is my completed sheet. I did have to change it a little bit because the person that I was following, I'm like really close to her size and mine was like way off, so I had to like alter it in the middle. But you just really need to work at this part because if you don't get the pattern right, then the dress will come out not so good. So I'm just making the pattern on some wrapping paper. This was my first attempt and I messed up, so I had to do it a second time. And yeah, there's just a lot going on, so you definitely need to watch the video very carefully, and it's worth it to spend a little more time getting it correctly than having to fix it later when you're sewing, which is very frustrating. So yeah, and when the pattern is done, you should be left with some pieces like the bust, the sleeve, and the front bodice dress section, and also the back. So with all of those pattern piece is completed, it's time to move on to cutting the fabric. But I noticed that because this duvet cover is double-sided, I needed to take all of it apart because I'm using both sides of the fabric for different projects. So that started the long journey of me seam ripping. So I was taking this apart, and this is what I got done in like, I don't know, 5 to 10 minutes-ish. So taking all of this apart is gonna take forever. So I'm probably gonna just do the rest of this, and that will be it for day 1. And then tomorrow I will start sewing this dress, and then if I have time I will start the next dress. But other than that, that's it for today. And yeah, also I'm like kind of sick because I just got my second dose for the COVID vaccine, so I'm just gonna finish this and get it over with. For the next day, the first thing I did was lay out my fabric on the ground, and this took a lot more work than you think it does. This is on like 2 times speed. So after that, I was looking at the tutorial. Why is that so hard to say? Tutorial. And she was using kind of like a silkier material that has a bit of stretch, while I'm using this kind of like cotton blend fabric. So she cut on the bias, but I felt like I didn't really need to do that, so I just folded the fabric in a way where I can maximize the amount of fabric that I'm using, so I create a little less waste and I can save this fabric for other stuff too, because this fabric is like pretty good quality. So here's me lining it up, and then to cut it out, I first lined up the pattern piece with the fabric on the fold, and then I just pinned it in place so I could have a little more control while cutting it out. And I just cut it with some extra seam allowance just so I have enough room that in case I mess up I can alter things and make it fit right, instead of having to like add weird like patches to make up for the fact that I didn't have enough fabric in that place or something. I don't know, just me overcompensating just in case I mess up. So here's me cutting some other fabric. This was the cup, and it needed to be more precise because it has all of the gathers taken in account for. So there's also this really cool like spiral thing that I had to do for the ruffles, and my cat kept trying to eat my scissors, so
You can't eat scissors!
that was fun. And
Stop!
yeah, here's what it looks like. I've never seen this method before, and I think it worked out pretty well. So here are all the fabric pieces I have laid out. The cups, the front, and the back, and also 2 sleeves, and also the spiral thing for the ruffle on the hem. The next thing I had to get started on was on the front of the dress, and I'm not going to go into too much detail since there's a tutorial that exists for this dress. So I basically started hemming things at the edges, and I'm doing a double rolled hem thing so it just looks a little bit cleaner on the inside, and then I'm also gathering the cups and attaching it to the front of the dress. Here's me doing a progress check-in, and I just attached the back and then also made this kind of stretchy detail with some elastic so I wouldn't have to use a zipper for the back, and she shows this in the tutorial so I just followed that. Next it's time for the puff sleeves. That is so hard to say, and then I just did that. Yeah, there's a lot of gaps in this part of the video because there's a tutorial that already exists, so I don't want to like just steal her content. So yeah, I added the ruffle, and that's it for that dress. Next is the harder dress, because I'm basically just making this up as I go based off a Pinterest picture that I saw of a vintage dress. So the basic idea for this dress is having this kind of lace-up detail in the front so it looks like a corset top, and in the back I'm doing this smocked panel, and for the bottom part I'm doing a circle skirt with a ruffled hem. So the first thing you need to do is take your bust measurement, and then to create the two front pieces, the left and the right, that are going to be joined by the lacing up detail, I had to take half of my bust measurement, which is 32 divided by 2, which is 16 for me, and then I added 4 inches of extra space just to, give myself some room, which was 20 inches in total for me. Then for the back, because shirring or smocking makes the fabric scrunch together, I just did my bust measurement in total, which is 32 inches for me. And then you also need to decide how long you want the bodice to be, and that was 10 inches for me. And also you need your waist measurement for the circle skirt, and I added some extra seam allowance, which I just added 2 inches. And you also need how long you want the skirt to be, and also the length of the ruffle, but that doesn't matter that much at this point. So the first thing I was cutting out is the back piece, which is going to be the smocked panel, and so that's going to be your bust measurement by how long you want your bodice to be. So for me, that was 32 inches long by 10 inches tall. So I just cut that out in a regular rectangle. You don't need to do anything with it for now, and you're just gonna set it aside and go on to the harder bodice pieces, mostly because I'm just freestyling right now. So next, to create the front panels, I'm taking the measurement, which is half of my bust measurement, and adding 4 inches, which is 20 inches in total for me, and I'm cutting out 2 rectangles, which are 20 inches long and 10 inches tall, because that's how I want the length of my bodice to be. And when you have those 2 pieces cut out, it should look something like this. And now we're really going to create the kind of pattern of what the front pieces look like. So I'm just first folding one of the rectangles in half, and I'm doing this so that the right side is facing up towards you and the wrong sides are touching. And then I'm just pulling out my inspiration picture and looking at how the panel is kind of constructed. So it has this kind of peak at the bottom and it curves upward towards the outer edge. So I'm just gonna mark that down with a pencil, but the pencil didn't really work, so I'm just using a marker instead. And even though it's on the right side of the fabric, it won't really show once we hem it and tuck it in, so it's fine. And then I'm just gonna cut it out. You really don't have to be scared of this step, because as long as you don't cut out too much, it's gonna turn out fine. So yeah, do whatever you want with this part. And then this is what it should look like. When you unfold it, it has the same little peak at the bottom as the inspiration picture. And I'm just showing here that it kind of curves upward, similarly in the photo and how I cut it in real life. Then I also took the other piece of fabric and I folded it with the right side facing up again, and I just laid the cut piece of fabric on top of the uncut one, and then I use that as a guide to see how much I should cut out, and I just basically traced it onto the other one, and you should have 2 pieces that look like this. So when you look at the top of the panel, it kind of has a V-neck a little bit, and then it curves back downward at the kind of strap point. So I'm just recreating that as well by creating little triangles and cutting them out. And when unfolded, it should look something like this. And I also copied that onto the other panel as well, so they'll be identical. And when I looked at this a little bit closer, because you have to cut the panels right down the middle for the lace-up detail, and also because you're hemming it, the slope will be kind of dulled, if you know what I mean. It won't be as noticeable, so I'm just trimming it out a little bit more, so once I hem it and I combine it with the other pieces and whatever, I can still see that kind of curve. So I'm just trimming it off a little bit so that the point is more noticeable. And then I also copied it onto the other piece of fabric, and it should look something like this. Then I cut down the middle of both of the rectangles, and it should look something like this. And now it's time to move on to the easier part. I'm just going to a circle skirt calculator online, and I'm choosing a midi length and a half circle skirt. And if you enter your waist measurement, it will create how big it should be. And so your radius they give you, that's going to be a tiny circle you're going to cut out, and then the length of your skirt, you're going to create a curve and cut along that. So my inner radius thing where the waist will be is around like 7 or 8 inches. So I just marked that using the ruler, kind of like a protractor, by like kind of swinging it around that edge point and just marking where I should cut. After you mark what the waist inner radius is, then you're gonna continue to the length of the skirt. So you're gonna start from where the radius thing stopped, and then you're gonna continue to how long you want your skirt to be. Mine, I decided I want it to be 19 inches long, so I'm gonna use that kind of protractor method again to create that semicircle shape so I can cut it out. And once you cut it out, it should look something like this. And now we're going to create the ruffle of the skirt. So first, you're going to measure the circumference of the half circle skirt with a tape measure, and then to do the ruffle, because you need extra fabric for it to be gathered, I'm going to take the measurement, which is 90, and then multiply it by 1.5, or you can do 2 times. And then I added a few extra inches just because I like having room to mess up if I mess up. So that's 140 inches for me. And then the length of the ruffle is going to be 5 inches tall, and then 140 inches wide. So I just cut out a rectangle in that size, and once you have that cut out, you should have the back, the front pieces, the ruffle, and the big skirt. And now we're just going to hem the top of the skirt. So the waist part, you're gonna do a double rolled hem and just do a straight stitch down it. And here's what it looks like. It should look very nice and clean, and you're also going to do that on the bottom edge of the skirt. So you're gonna do another double rolled hem just so it's nice and clean and finished. And then after that, we're gonna take the ruffle rectangle. I didn't have enough fabric to just cut it all in one go, so I had to connect some pieces of fabric. And to do that, I'm doing this technique which is called a French seam. So I'm connecting it wrong sides together. So it's just connected like that, and then I'm going to do a straight stitch down that part where I pinned it. Then I'm going to trim off the excess fabric. And then after that, I'm going to flip it to where it's right sides together now, and then just pin it about 1/4 to 1/2 inch so it's nice and clean and finished on the inside and both the outside. And that's just one of the techniques you can do to finish off raw seams so it looks nice and clean from both the inside and out, which makes it look a little more professional and less homemade. And after you're done, this is what it should look like from the inside. It just looks so much better than just doing a hem, just like a regular hem or seam. And from the outside, it also looks very nice and clean and finished. And now for what we're gonna do is we're going to create the gathers that makes the ruffle a ruffle. So I just hemmed the bottom edge of it, and then afterwards at the top I did a straight stitch, but I lengthened the stitch length to 4 and loosened the tension to 3 when my original settings were 2 and 4. And then I'm going to not back stitch and just do a straight stitch down the top, and then also do another line of straight stitches like 1/4 inch down. You can just look up how to do gathers if you don't know what I mean, but after that I'm just pulling on the threads to kind of ruffle it and make it fit the bottom edge of the skirt. Then I'm just pinning that with the right sides together and doing another straight stitch, but this time with the regular setting, so it's nice and tight and it'll stay together and not become wrinkly or anything. And afterwards, this is what it looks like from the inside. And I just did a check-in, like trying it on, and it looks very nice and swooshy. And then to make the bodice, I'm first going to take the 2 pieces for both the left and the right, and then I'm putting them right sides together and pinning it along the edge, so I can just turn it right side out and it'll have nice finished seams. And I'm also leaving a little gap here so I can turn it inside out. I mean right side out from the inside out. It looks a lot less confusing when you're looking at the video than when I'm trying to explain it. So after that is done, I just did a straight stitch. If I didn't already say that, I'm just gonna turn it to the right side out. And it should look something like this. Now I'm just going to do like a straight stitch around the edge on the top, and also close that little gap by tucking in the fabric so it looks nice and clean. And then I'm just pinning it so it's a little bit easier, and I'm doing this kind of top stitch thing around the edge just to give the panels a little more structure, since I'm not actually using any boning or corset things. So once you have that, it should look something like this. I'm actually very proud of this because it looks so nice right now. So yeah, you're just gonna do that to both panels, so now you only have 2 pieces for the front panels. And then now we're going to make the back panel. So first I'm hemming both the top and the bottom, because once you shirr it, it's very hard to hem it. So I'm just doing that beforehand. I'm using another double rolled hem, and make sure it's about the length of your front panel so they kind of line up. Now we're going to shirr this back panel, and to do that you need some elastic thread. This is just the brand that I've always used, always meaning like I've made one other thing with this elastic thread. So you're going to wind that onto your bobbin. You need to hand wind it, because if you use your machine to do it, it will stretch out the elastic thread and the shirring won't work as well. And then you're just going to thread it through your machine like you normally do, by just putting it into the bobbin case and just loading it in, and then using the hand lever to pull it up from the bottom. And this is what it should look like. Now for the shirring to work better, I also made the stitch length a little bit longer and increased the tension a little bit more, so it'll be a little more like scrunchy. And to shirr, you're just going to do like lines back and forth around 1/4 inch apart from each other. And there are tutorials online in the internet about this, so this is just the pattern that I'm following. This is from Anika Victoria, I think is how you pronounce her name. So if you need more instruction, you should watch that video. And this is what it looks like afterwards. It was a bit long. It was a lot longer than I thought it was gonna be, so I'm actually gonna cut it in half and save half of it for another project and use the other half for this. Now we're just going to put it together with the front panels. So I'm just putting it right sides together at both the edges and doing a straight stitch down that part, and then I'm also adding another zigzag stitch just to secure it further because I don't want it like unraveling or anything while I'm wearing it. So you're gonna turn your stitch length back to the normal thing. Mine was 2, and I'm putting the tension back to normal because I don't want my string to break. I mean thread. So yeah, this is what it looks like. I try to do it as nicely and cleanly as possible. And now looking at the photo again, there's like more panels in this kind of structure for the bodice. So to fake that, I'm just tucking and pinning some extra fabric from the front and just making it look like there's an extra seam there. So I'm just winging this, just make it look nice is all the advice I have to say. I really just did wing this and it turned out fine. So I'm just going to do a straight stitch down where I pinned and making sure it lines up nicely and it looks pretty symmetrical on both sides. Mine did turn out a little bit uneven, but you know, it's fine. It adds to the rustic prairie look. So this is what it looks like. And then I also added some ribbon that I just pinned down, and I'm going to do a straight stitch down it 3 times just to really secure that, and it makes it look like it has some boning even though it doesn't. So life hack. And to create the lace-up detail, after I sewed all of those lines, I'm going to twist some ribbon. This is some sheer ribbon that I got from Dollar Tree, and create this looped effect and just pin that in place. And once you do that down on both sides, I did a zigzag stitch down it, so I kind of secure it, and this is what it looks like from the inside. I think there are also tutorials on how to create this, but this is just my method. Then I'm just going to lace it up with this really bad transition because it was like the next day and the lighting change is just kind of weird. Okay, I'm rambling now. So this is what the bodice should look like now, and it's time for the kind of scary part, connecting it with the skirt. So because I didn't close up the edge earlier, I'm just going to do a straight stitch down the skirt to like connect it, you know, so it's actually a skirt now. And here's what it looks like. Oh, I did do a French seam on this, and then I'm just putting the bodice, so the kind of V-shaped still is showing, so I'm tucking the skirt underneath the bodice portion, so it looks like this, but it still looks nice and neat and finished. And because I really wanted the V part of the bodice to pop, and I also had to put some darts in the side just so it would fit me better. There was a lot of this janky kind of sewing going on, so I needed to cover that up. So I have some lace ribbon, which I'm going to show a little bit later, but first I added the straps and I just made them adjustable from these old like bra clasp thingies. I just tried it on and pinned where I want them to be. This really doesn't matter however you do it, you don't have to make them adjustable. And I just made them out of some ribbon. So this is what I was talking about earlier. I got some lace ribbon from Joann's for like $7.99 for this whole roll, which is pretty expensive for ribbon if you're asking me, but it looks pretty. So I'm just using that to cover up some sewing mistakes, and so to do that I'm just pinning it along both the waist section and also at the top. But for the top, because the back shirt panel has this ruffle, I'm only doing it where the ruffle isn't showing because I don't want to have to use any more ribbon than I have to, so I can save it for another project. And this is what it looks like. And now here are the finished products. I'm actually very proud of these dresses. It looks like something I could buy. So here's the first dress from the tutorial, and it's actually very cute. I have worn it out once already, and it's been washed. It's not falling apart, so that's good. It just looks very nice and dreamy. It's also flowy. The neckline is a bit low, so if I make this dress again, then I would probably make it a little bit higher. But for the winter, maybe I can wear like a turtleneck underneath for that kind of layered look. And now the review of the second dress. It actually turned out very pretty for not using a pattern and just winging it on the way. The lace-up detail looks very cute, and I'm probably going to use this method on tops or something. And the skirt is also very swooshy. It is a little bit see-through, but I can just wear shorts underneath. So yeah, I really like how it turned out. It's just nice and fitting. I don't know how to describe it. It just feels nice. The back is a little bit janky because the seam of the skirt doesn't line up with the zipper, but you know, I'm not looking at the back, so it won't bother me that much. Other people can deal with it. So those are the dresses that I made. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe because I worked very hard on these dresses and this video. Yeah, I'll see you in my next video.